welcome everyone to tonight's Pride Perspective conversation with our community. We are delighted to have a very creative group of people on this call with different backgrounds and different years of experience. And I want to thank, just right off the bat, thank Ned and Trevor and Joey for being a part of this call, and they'll be able to introduce themselves and talk to you a little bit in just a minute. But these Pride Perspectives has been going on since April, and it's been an opportunity for our community of Trinity-Pawling to reach out to our alumni base, our current families, our newly enrolled educational consultants, a number of different guests and attendees have been a part of these. So we've been very lucky, and we're lucky to be able to host more throughout the summer. We're going to be having a panel on athletics and recruiting. We're going to be having a panel on leadership in our school. We're going to do a panel on the effort system, which is, for those of you who know Trinity-Pawling, a pillar of our community, and the men that have and women that have gone through these hallways. And so please keep on the lookout on our website, as well as invitations to keep you in the loop on these Pride Perspectives. As you know, tonight is all about creativity. And we are lucky to have Ned Reade, who has been at Trinity-Pawling for 45 years. He started his boarding school career here, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that. But creativity has been a huge part of the lives in front of you, even including me. Even though I didn't really pick up a paintbrush, my art and creativity was music, and that's probably all I'm going to say about me for tonight. But you know, this webinar tonight is going to allow you to ask questions. And as you know, in many webinars, there's a question and answer format. So please send in questions throughout the night, and we'll get to them if we can. We'll also answer some of the questions that came in when you registered. There are a number of questions that we'll get to as well. But we also want to make this a conversation of friends, of alumni, and really talk about the importance of creativity in the lives of our students, and of course in the lives of our alumni. So the webinar is being recorded, as all of them are, and they can be found on our YouTube channel, which has just an incredible amount of content, including these Pride Perspectives, but also the work that our students have done over the years. So I'm going to start off right away with just getting to Ned Reade and talking about his, in a short amount of time, but talking about his 45 years, a brief history of the arts at Trinity-Pawling, and just how, you know, you evolved, Mr. Reade, in your time here, coming in from college, right, joining the forces of Trinity-Pawling faculty.
Sure. When I arrived at Trinity-Pawling, I was just out of Williams College. TP was my first job. I taught art, regular art, advanced art. I taught music appreciation, art appreciation. But I'll tell you, there were only about 4 kids in each class. There wasn't a whole lot of, I didn't do a whole lot of damage that first year. You know, over the years, when I arrived, there was I replaced a guy who taught some art, but was also the French teacher. So art was definitely kind of a part-time job, and I was full-time art and music, and then and then there was a choir director, but he was also a history teacher. So he was sort of part-time in his arts field. And now we have, and then there was a shop teacher. And now we have 6 full-time people teaching in the arts, from vocal music, instrumental music, jazz band, videography, photography, another visual arts person, and a full-time drama guy. So, we've got 6 people all, and what I'm most proud of is that everybody's a professional in their area. Our drama teacher does Shakespeare in the summer. Our choir teacher sings professionally. Our instrumental teacher plays in jazz groups and has written 2 novels. And I try to have some art shows when I'm not teaching. And so we are artists / teachers, and I'll leave it at that.
And how would you, and why don't we actually, before I do that, Trevor Cole, class of 2020, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, and that way when we get into the meat of these questions, they'll have something to think about when they're hearing from you. So tell us about your little journey at Trinity-Pawling.
Yeah, so I'm from kind of the center of Connecticut. It's called Hebron. And I went to public school for 1 year, and I was a lacrosse player. And then at that time, Nick Bell was the coach at Trinity-Pawling, and he saw me at a showcase, and I visited TP, and I knew Chris Connolly at the time. You guys know Chris Connolly. And yeah, he had nothing but good things to say about the school. And so then I kind of furthered my pursuit. And I actually believe I met Mr. Reade on one of the return dates in May, maybe. It was April ones. And yeah, my parents were all for it. And as far as art, I came in and I was not extremely serious about art. But I came in and I painted probably since I was 10, just, I don't know, messing around. And I never picked up really an instrument until freshman year at Trinity-Pawling. And so and then sophomore year, I joined an instrumental music class, and I met Will Rickert, who is very proficient at the guitar, to say the least. And it kind of took off from there, and I started playing more and more and getting more into it. And that's how I got into the music side of it.
Had you played guitar before?
I played a little bit, I wouldn't say anything crazy. I wouldn't consider myself a musician before that time period. I was definitely more of a visual artist before then, because I did some photography and stuff, but not a musician until that sophomore year.
And now, just for the audience, he is.
So now I'm going to I'm planning on going to school for music technology at Stevens Institute of Technology. So yeah, I kind of came full circle, and I got real lucky.
Awesome.
And I credit Mr. Reade and TP.
And Mr. Kelsey.
Yeah.
And Mr. Joseph Rossano, class of 1981.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Long Island, and I went to Greenvale School, and after Greenvale, which was, I think it's kindergarten and 9th grade, I chose TP, and for a number of reasons. Probably most importantly is I had some friends that were there. And as far as a career in art was concerned, I was always interested in natural history and sort of representing it, but I hadn't really figured out how to do that yet. And I was also part of a program that I don't believe exists anymore at Trinity-Pawling. It was called the Language Retraining Program. And
Joseph, it's still in existence in full force. Just got
it. Is it?
Okay,
it's
just
great.
a different name.
Yeah. Okay. So, trying to gain a command of the English language, expressing myself, in a traditional way in the written form was a challenge. And I wasn't going to get emotional, but the ability to actually connect with Ned and to have a place where I could express myself through a way that was very comfortable for me, which was through making things, was certainly fostered by, the art department, which was headed by Ned. I don't know, it was like your third year that when I was I started in 78 or 77. I don't know.
Yeah. It's my third year. Yep.
And, so from that point on, I became very interested in ceramics. And I recall some silkscreen work that we did. And those were things that when I went, eventually went to school and studied art, were all, the way you work through the process of making something, and how you think about it beforehand were tied together, both by, what I learned from perspective from Ned and from the retraining program. I mean, really, I don't know how I would have kept my thoughts straight otherwise. So that's why I was there.
Wonderful.
So it's so interesting. I don't know whether I can figure out the percentages, but the number of the students that came to Trinity-Pawling with dyslexia or struggles with their learning that did so well in art because it was a form of communication that didn't involve the spoken and written word or spelling and all that kind of stuff. So it was like these students were just released when they came into my classroom. They were expressing themselves in ways that they couldn't in other classes, history or English. So.
Well, and Ned, do you feel like, and I know I can't imagine that you'll have a percentage, but how many of the students that come into your class maybe taking that foundation art, and Trevor, I don't know if you were able to, bypass that first year art class, but how many of your students come in, never touching really, I mean, of course, everybody takes art in middle school, but when they come into your class and really have no foundation, do you have a percentage, or do you have
most teenage boys took their last art class when they're in 5th grade. They remember tracing leaves on a piece of paper. They remember putting their hand in plaster, and they remember some, juvenile drawings. And then as they get older, they look back and say, I'm not very good because those don't look very good. And they go on to play sports, and they play baseball and football and soccer, and they're outside all the time, and they're really not sitting down with an easel, drawing or painting. And so in a normal art class that I might teach, and I go around the room and say, what have you had for art before? And most of them say, well, I can't draw a stick figure. I can't draw a straight line. I've never done any art. A few kids will say, I did something last year, or I did something. But you ask them, what did you remember from last year? They go, oh, we just sort of messed around. I don't really remember what we did. And so I'm thinking, like, what was that year like?
Right.
So most boys
how do you inspire them? How do you get out? Because I mean, I know Trevor, you said that you had done some painting before, but the work of yours that we see in the halls is not just, done some painting. So I guess it's a combination for all of you. How did Mr. Reade, in his mentorship of you or of his teaching, what is it that he gave you, or Ned, what do you instill in the boys to? I mean, it's amazing to walk through the halls of Cluett or go into the art studio and see what they're producing. How do you get that
Trevor,
out?
Yeah. Well, I think Mr. Reade definitely has a certain teaching style that's very relaxed, you could say. But I think as far as like creativity goes and like art and anything with that type of creative process, you kind of need to be in an atmosphere where it can kind of be free flowing and not so constricting, and it's interesting because like there's a lot of aspects of TP that involve quite a bit of discipline. But for a lot of kids, I think the art aspect of life is kind of like a release, and it's cool when you have the freedom to kind of go in, do what you need to do. And, we joke around and stuff, but like the kids there learn discipline from other aspects of life, and then or aspects of school there, and then they can apply that kind of self-motivation to the art, which they have more control over, which is, I think, a really cool way of doing it.
I like to think of teaching art you're taking an analogy, if you're teaching a language, you teach people a few words, then you teach them how to make a sentence out of those words in French or Spanish, and then you'd make a longer sentence, a compound sentence or a complex sentence, then you write a paragraph. And I think in art, you teach them how to draw lines, and you draw shapes, which is a line that encloses something. And then you get around to shading those shapes, which makes it now three-dimensional. So you go from line to shape to 3D, and then you branch out into color, and you start teaching, you go from gray tones to a full palette. And you do it a little bit at a time. I don't throw, 24 colors at someone the first day and say, okay, do whatever you want. We kind of start with building blocks the way you would in a language.
And I think you had mentioned earlier today when we were talking about this that, it's being creative and practicing your craft. The more you do it, as you had mentioned, shooting a free throw or practicing, on a driving range, those are all, it just doesn't, some people have it naturally, and it just comes to them. But that aspect of hard work is a big part of that. Mr. Rossano is in his studio in Washington or California, so it sounds like somebody's just the beauty of live television. So I guess that talk about that, practice, I guess, I don't know if it always makes perfect, but that you could always, I remember you always talking about the people who stayed in the art center until 10 o'clock at night, whether it was because they had a project due the next day, or they just knew they had to get there and work and work and work.
Sure, why don't you talk about
Yeah, I
the
mean,
factor of time? Yeah.
Like 12:30, 1 in the morning. Just, I mean, and it wasn't always because like we had to. Usually when we were really late, we had to get something done. But I mean, there was like 4 of us and we were really close friends, and the atmosphere in the art class was just really fun. So like we were there even when we didn't have to be. And I mean, at that class, the art kind of got more demanding, so it took a lot of concentration and stuff. But at the same time, we would, play music and have fun with it. And I think that's really important when you're doing that, because you got to get in that kind of flow state of just.
And would you agree that there's a correlation between the amount of time you spend on something and how good it comes out?
No, definitely not. I mean, no. It's definitely a big mindset thing. If you go in frustrated already, you're going to be sitting there for 45 minutes and you can't even paint an apple. Like that's happened to me so many times. But then there's other times where, I'll get half a painting done in 45 minutes. But so I think like consistency definitely is the biggest struggle for me, at least when it comes to that kind of thing. Because it's
how about with music? Practice important?
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, I think, and I'm sure it's the same way for any visual art. It's like you practice technically so you can kind of like implore your personality into your music. You know what I mean? And like express yourself. But you want to be as technically proficient as you can be so you can express yourself in the best way that you'd like to, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, that's why like I practice music, because I want to be able to be as authentic as I can be.
Joe, we're talking about practicing and putting time in to get you, improve your craft or your skills as a musician or artist.
Well, and Joe, what would you say is because obviously you showed us your studio but you're also, I mean, what would you say is your, if you had a passion with one sort of style, is there one, or are you quote unquote all over the map in that way?
So I would be considered a multimedia artist who works in, say, the discipline of assemblage. And so I make things that bring a lot of different ideas and art forms together to relate some sort of story. And in my career, it started out as small things, and now it's an entire gallery space. But, you know, what Trevor was saying earlier is really important, in that, you know, one of the things that you learn from athletics, and one of the things that you learn from the discipline and the regiment that is part of being a student at TP every day, is how to stay focused and persevere through the development of an idea. And Ned was talking about the same thing. That to be successful as an artist, you know, from my experience at least, is it requires, you know, to be super successful, it requires being in the right place at the right time, but being 100% committed and disciplined in getting your work done and getting it in front of the right people. And you know, I know that there are many, you know, there are people out there that are extremely talented, but the skills that you gain from being at TP and, you know, being in, you know, mandatory athletics, all of those things teach you teamwork. They teach you how to bring different artists into the conversation that make your work better. And, you know, so my experience was as an artist was made likely, you know, the difficulty was shortcut by the experience that I had at Trinity-Pawling.
Well, so one of the questions from the registration was, does the value of creativity through the arts help develop intellectual abilities? So, you know, Joe, you and I were both in that, what was formerly known as the language retraining program, and now known as the LEAD program. And I know from my, you know, singing for me was my form of art, but it's obviously different than drawing and painting and watercolors. And so do you all feel like the creativity through the arts develops intellectual abilities? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, it made a huge impact, because the further you go down the rabbit hole of like all the artistry, you know, you kind of learn to know yourself better, I guess, in essence, you know, like, because what you're doing is like, it's very meditative for a lot of those things. I mean, you're by yourself for a big portion of it, at least like alone with your thoughts. So you definitely learn to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And you can, at least I could kind of put that into practice when I was studying and doing projects and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Mr. Reade, in your 45 years, what would you?
Well, I think if I've told kids who take art and never take art again after they leave Trinity-Pawling, but I tell them, if you can do something you've never done before, learn to spin a piece of clay on a wheel and make something out of it. If you can learn something you've never done before, learn how to do it, and develop some mastery, you can take any class you want. And if you put the same kind of effort and focus, you know, take a psychology course, take an economics course, take a you know, an environmental course that you've never had any background in, and you'll do fine, because you've shown that you can do something that you've never done before in art and be successful. So, hey, you can do whatever you want. That's sort of my message to a lot of students.
Well, I'm going to go live to a question right now. And it's to you, Joey. Did you create the mastodon behind you? It is outstanding.
Yeah, I did create the mastodon behind me. Yeah.
And that, you had mentioned that world history was a big part of your passion.
So, yeah, you know, so the mastodon would clearly answer the question previously posed about, you know, does it help you learn? These pieces are 100% designed to help you learn. And so, yeah, everything that I do is a function of realizing that visual imagery can remove the intimidation that difficult subjects may, you know, present one, and making things that represent the emotion or tell the story. You know, as they say, a picture can tell 1,000 words, helps you understand. So in all of my work, regardless of what I do, I try to bring that together. And, you know, if I follow this to its logical conclusion, or it's, you know, the root, I mean, it's the guy that we're both here for, Ned, you know, because I seriously, I mean, that's how it all came to be. So.
Yeah, and Trevor, when I had you guys drawing parts of engines this spring, you have to know how it works to be able to draw it, you know?
Yeah, I was god awful at that. That was so difficult because I've never drawn something that mechanical before, you know?
Yeah, and did you feel like you really looked at it more carefully?
Yeah. Like anything else.
Good, good.
I have a question for Joe, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Free form.
So do you think, like, obviously you've done quite a few or dealt with quite a few mediums, right? So, like, do you think learning one medium has helped you, or every time you learn a new one, it's helped you learn the next one, or the ones previous, the types of arts that you've learned previously have helped you develop in other areas as an artist? Because, you know, for example, like I think like painting helps like music, you know what I mean? It's just kind of the same part of the brain.
The answer is not simple. So I'll try to simplify it. At least for me, it's not simple. I just think about what I want to say and how it will be received by my audience in the way best received by my audience in the way I want them to receive it. And that may mean I make something that looks like an engraving. It may mean I carve something out of a piece of wood. And every time I've had to satisfy that picture in my head, I've had to learn a new discipline. So I've been doing this for 30 some odd years now, and I've been very fortunate to be able to do this for a living. Each time I took on a new, you know, direction, I would say, I'm never going to do it again. I'm never going to try to do this again. I'm never going to try something new again. But it goes back to, you know, what I think we were both talking about earlier, which is it's about discipline. And if you can figure out how to put yourself in the mindset that makes you successful playing the guitar, that is the same mindset that it'll require to become a successful wood carver or ivory or you know, marble carver or something. So I hope that it sort of answers your question.
That makes perfect sense, because I mean, you talk to most artists and it's you know, you have that picture in your head, and then the technical ability is just kind of like a part of the hill, part of the climb, you know what I mean? It's just like a bump in the road, and then you get through that, and then that's part of the journey, is just learning. And so that's super interesting that you answered it that way, because I mean, I feel the same way.
Well, so Trevor, because you are the closest thing that we have to a TP student, one of the questions is, do TP students nowadays seem to understand and appreciate the importance of creativity? And within that answer, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about our, you know, practicum for civic leadership, and especially our senior independent projects, because I think the senior independent project is going to answer that question in a really good way.
Yeah, TP does a really good job of entrusting its students like their own time and and efforts and whatnot through other people in the school, and even money through, they give Solomon stuff, funding, to explore creatively what they need to explore to fulfill what they want to fulfill. For me, it was I like produced a song for Sam Fechner. He did a classical album, which was very cool. And then Solomon Hess did, he was the head prefect, wrote a screenplay with all or mostly original music, 2 covers, and we performed it with the live band and all TP actors, which was like crazy. I mean, that's like no high school kid does that. What school does that? You know what I mean? And also an all boys school, like that in itself is just wild. And so to be given the opportunity and the time and resources to be able to explore those kind of avenues that, a lot of teenage kids don't even get to begin to explore, you know what I mean? Because not a lot of kids do theater. And then this kid did theater, not only did do theater, he wrote a screenplay and then we performed it. I mean, that in itself speaks volumes, I think, about the school and their ability to help kids out. So
Yeah, and I think, one of the things I did a webinar last night on why boarding school, and an aspect of my conversation last night was just the opportunity to do different things that you might not have thought you could do, as Trevor said, in high school or middle school. And what's incredible about the 3 people that Trevor just mentioned, Trevor, Solomon, and Sam, they all 3 really came here, of course, for the academics and the experience, but 2 of them were lacrosse players, and Sam was a basketball player from Germany. And Solomon became the head prefect, the lead actor, and now a producer, director in the theater. And Sam, valedictorian, and wrote an incredible soundtrack that I now listen to on a daily basis. And I think that's not just, and I'll say this honestly, it's not just Trinity-Pawling. I think boarding school in general enables students to reach outside the box. And that has a lot to do with arts, because there are many athletes that come to boarding schools who don't know that they have that gift or that talent. And I think, Mr. Reade, that's something that you've seen over 45 years of varsity captains of your soccer team or your squash team or your tennis team instilling their talents in a different way. And I know there's 1,000 examples that you have of that. But is there something about, again, I think, Trevor, you said the all boys, I think, is a huge part of that. But Mr. Reade, is there something that about the Trinity-Pawling experience that you think gives kids an opportunity to find their gifts and their talents?
The students are just exposed to a range of teachers and a range of colleagues, to their own peers who bring all kinds of different experiences together, and they dare to try people writing poetry for the newspaper when they've never written poetry before. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable. And when you look around and see one person do a good painting, and you say, well, maybe I could do that too. And one student inspires another student to new heights. So it's sort of like, when you're on a team and who can kick the soccer ball the farthest, and you all stand out there before practice and try to yank the thing in half field. And then it's the same thing in art. Sometimes you stand around and say, well, who can paint the best apple, Trevor? Like who's got it? Look at that one. Look, who's got the reflection in the ceramic bowl? I mean, so I think the level of the competition, not in a nasty way, but boys are naturally competitive, and they look around and they see somebody do something and they want to try it too.
Right. And
remember, you got into theater because you saw everybody else doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm the girl.
Yes. That's why I was a theater kid. So a question from the audience has a lot to do with, how art at Trinity-Pawling has changed, and you mentioned it in your introduction, going from, you know, your as the art teacher and then part-time, but the evolution of the art department, and the question is, has the establishment of filmmaking ever been considered? And obviously the answer is yes, but can you talk a little bit about our, Miss Rafferty and our digital media and the work that you could see on our YouTube channel?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, you know, it was sort of a big step when photography started being offered in art classes, because that was not the hand drawing it. It was a mechanical means of representing the world. But today, the people's cell phones, iPhones can be a camera and a recorder, and kids are learning how to splice and edit and, you know, do special effects and all that kind of stuff. Which you know, who knows in 3 years what the next technological thing is that will allow kids to express themselves in yet another manner.
Right. And I think that's something, you know, to answer the question a little bit more deeply in a way that our YouTube channel, there's obviously tons of webinars since March, but many of the videos that you see on that channel are student produced. And that is through our broadcast journalism class, which has a little bit of our TP Sports Nation is part of that class. But many of the videos that you see, our acceptance video for admissions is done every year by a group of kids from that class. And every year there's been a little bit different flavor to it. And it really has enabled our school to move in a different direction. And I think a lot of the boys enjoy, you know, again, they might not like the paintbrush or the charcoal, but they would get out there and film their friends doing different things. And, you know, there's also some of the classes that Mr. Poon is teaching in digital arts. And again, it's not just, as you said, it's not just going to the dark room and developing film anymore. It's getting on the computer and creating, you know, different types of masterpieces from an iPhone, as you put it. So, Mr. Reade, we talk about a lot about mentorship. We talk about being a role model in teaching and in for your other teachers on campus. You know, you are the senior master at Trinity-Pawling. You talked about resilience in a chapel talk this spring, especially with what we've been dealing with the past couple of months and how we will deal with things moving forward. You know, some of these words that we talk about, perseverance, resiliency, can you talk about ways in which creativity can help our families and our friends throughout the summer and moving forward?
Well, in some ways, to be creative, you have to have a level of focus, and you have to have that aha moment where you have an idea what you want to do, but then you have to be relatively focused to make that idea come into fruition. And so I think, you know, somebody's got to figure out how to take care of this virus, and somebody's got to have the idea and figure out through biology and chemistry how to do it. And you know, these are all things, resilience and perseverance and all that stuff all feeds the creative stuff. But there has to be someone with an idea. Tesla, you know, electric cars, someone's got to have the idea to make it work. Someone designed this. We're all pretty familiar with it, but somebody figured out the shape that would work, and so I know the creativity comes in all manners.
Well, and Joe, speaking of a mouse or whatever it might be, how does a young artist, um, how can a young artist make a career as an art, sustainable? What is it? How did Trinity-Pawling prepare you? How did LSU prepare you to continue with this path for the last 30 years? What is it? What is it? What does it have to be? What's in you that made you be able to do this? Both of you. We're talking about 75 years, 70 years of experience between the two of you. What is it that has kept you going? What instills you to do what you do?
Oh God, that's a great question. It's not an easy question.
Boom. One of those.
So narrowing it down, the thing that enables you to be an artist is an acceptance that that's what you're going to be. I think that's very important. I took a tremendous amount of art history and I made a lot of things, and I was very uncomfortable calling myself an artist because I thought people like, Michelangelo were artists. I thought, great people who did great things were artists. And, it took me a while to become comfortable calling myself an artist. And in my personal life, Trinity-Pawling teaches you how to be a successful member of society, and on a host of levels, from organizing your life to how you interact with people to how you represent yourself. All of that translates to how you approach a gallery, how you talk to a gallery owner, how you pitch a project, and so much of what I learned at Trinity-Pawling was that the word no didn't necessarily exist. It would be difficult and you would work through it, and you learned how to do that. And I think that you look, that's not common. And I think the boarding school, the self-dependence that comes from boarding school, the people that you come in contact with that help you direct your life that are different than your parents, I think all that stuff's extremely important. So in my life, I was able to become an artist because I learned how to be a team player as an athlete at Trinity-Pawling, and how to translate that information from a coach who is an art teacher to other people. And, so I was a director of an art program for Water for Crystal. I worked there. I directed a studio for a couple of very famous artists. Those things would not have happened if I hadn't had that sort of, training in being a team player, because I didn't go into business. That was not the direction I went, and you do not learn those skills when you go to art school. And so I would say, that Trinity-Pawling, and this is just, it's undeniable that those things had a tremendous impact on making it possible for me to do what I do.
And where, obviously you have the work in your studio behind you, but where can we find your work? Where can we find some of these galleries that you're talking about?
So if you were looking for my work, you could just go to my website, and then you can search my name and you can find dealers, or you could contact me directly. The vast majority of what I've been making in the last 10 years has been focused at going to museums. And so I quite literally do what we were discussing earlier in this conversation, which is I create a narrative that's connected to the environment and create and connect that to natural history. So you could go to a natural history museum. I have a show at the Olympic National Park coming up next year. I have a show at the Glass Museum in Tacoma next year. Right now, a lot of things are shut down, so you can't go anywhere. but Mark Moore in LA is one of my dealers, and David Austin in Palm Desert is one of my dealers, and Trevor Gallery in Seattle is one of my dealers. And then I work with a couple of people in New York that you could contact.
Great. All right. So speaking of the environment, and we'll take a couple more questions, and then we know everybody's been on Zoom or some video chat a lot in their days, so we don't want to keep them on too long. But environment, outdoor activity, Trinity-Pawling has 230 some odd acres of property. And I know, Mr. Reade, you've painted Trinity-Pawling and the property for years. What is it about maybe the connection between outdoor activity or just farming? Mrs. Reade is not only an incredible English teacher, writer, but in her second mountain, she found farming. We have a farming team. Is she here? Is she back?
Yes, she
I just got in, JP.
She brought the veggies in.
Just got back from haying. But, well, if she's willing, this question was going to be for her, but how, well, there she is.
In all my glory.
She is.
Sorry, I'm a wreck.
It's okay.
Right.
Again, live television. It's brilliant. So how does TP, how do we combine these two forces? You were here, you started this farming program. Josh Frost, an alum, is continuing it. We obviously have a lot of great public space on this campus. So how does all of that unlock creativity? I mean, you're creating now on a daily basis, just in a different way.
It's so funny. For the past, 6 years or so since I've been doing this, I sound like any alum. There's not a day that goes by where I don't use some skill that I learned at TP. It's so true. It's the organization, it's the thinking ahead, the planning, the meticulous nature of everything. But also, you got to be able to think on the fly all the time. You can have your lesson plan as a teacher, but you got to be able to offshoot with that. Same thing with farm. You go into the day like, this is what we're going to do today. And then you're like, you know what? Something broke. Something isn't working. Something's not right. You have to think on the fly and find really creative solutions. And on the farm, it's with whatever you have around you. So sports equipment becomes tools. You learn to patch things up really well with whatever you have within about 10 paces of you. Not only that, but then also, that's the technical side, but just the sheer beauty of working with the land. You can be down there, weeding, then you look up, it's like, this is the most staggeringly beautiful place to be outside and around. And,
How about the upper acres? The new 150 acres.
Oh, up there. It's actually another thing. I don't know if this ties in, but I was thinking about this. As a writer, anytime I need to come up with an opening line for a piece, I go out on a walk. And I always have my index card in the back pocket, TP library cards, actually.
You've had those
Index,
since I've known you.
What's that?
You've had those since I've known you.
Correct. I always go out with a pen and my index cards in the back of the paper, and within just a hike, a dog walk, and always going up in the cornfields, I will come home with my opening line of whatever the piece is. It is the biggest gift from God. And it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's just going out and just kind of like losing myself in nature. And I come back, I'm like centered, and there's my opener.
So, and here's where I want to go. Trevor and Joe, what happens that kicks you into a creative mindset, or what do you orchestrate? Like Mrs. Reade says, oh, I know I need to get an opening line for this piece. A good walk in the fields will get it to me. Joe, what do you do to get yourself in a space where, okay, I'm gonna get my head moving forward on this?
Well, it's already been stated, a walk in the woods.
All right, you too?
I live in a temperate rainforest. I could quite literally go outside and there are giant trees. So yeah, so absolutely 100%. And it is at the core of why I do what I do. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'll either take a walk. There's a park down there just with a stream and stuff, and I'll walk around there. And I think like my best and maybe they're not necessarily about art, but like the most interesting to me thoughts and stuff that I have are when I'm just walking alone in the woods, or like walking in a park, or maybe even like working out outside is a big one.
Yep.
And I do that every
I would guess that I don't think enough kids at TP really take the time to walk around the pond or walk up into the cornfields or into the new farmland.
Well, it's something, this fall, that it's going to be an incredible opportunity for us to really utilize this property, and for the glory that it is. Even just this photo behind me, we have beautiful buildings and beautiful landscapes, that, well, I'm even looking at one of Mr. Reade's watercolors right in front of me. And we're filled with the beautiful landscape and the environment. And that's, I think, as we move into this new era of Trinity-Pawling come September, we're going to be utilizing this property in a way that we've never before. We have so many teachers who have passions about the outdoors and utilizing everything that you've just talked about. That, our theater teachers, they're taking hikes all the time, whether it's memorizing lines, or as I mentioned, Josh Frost is up on those fields every day working to make this place even prettier, more sustainable. I think that those words that we've talked about, perseverance, resiliency, that all comes from this type of work that we're all doing. Mr. Reade, it's 7:52. If you had, for our audience tonight, for hopefully the hundreds and hundreds of people that will like this video once it goes on our YouTube channel, do you have anything sort of to end the evening? Maybe that I'm giving you 2 minutes to encapsulate your 45 years. But what is it about what you've done and the life that you've led? See, Joe, it's getting in here too. It's all about relationships. But what is it about what you've done that had you doing it year after year and day after day? I mean, nobody knows the story, but this man and this woman, they basically lived in a dorm for the first 60 years of their lives. I mean, this was their home. This was their life. They didn't know anything else. What made you keep doing it? What was it about this school, this community, the town of Pawling? It's remarkable. And
as you started the question, I was thinking, what I've loved doing is feeling like I could teach people how to be creative. I could teach people how to do art, even if they didn't have much experience. That was rewarding. As you continue to talk and the career and all this kind of stuff, it's the people. It's the people, the colleagues on campus. It's the students that are funny and bedeviling and drive you crazy sometimes, but you love them to death. Willie Ackerman, my God, that guy drives me crazy, but he's one of the most. I just love the kid. So they're not all these perfect kids that come through, but they have so much spunk, and they're just fun. It's fun to be around.
Yeah, and I will mention also that Mr. Reade has started a little art gallery in the village of Pawling, and I know you probably have other galleries elsewhere, but why don't you tell because I think there are a bunch of people that live close by here. Tell us about your gallery.
Well, it's kicking and screaming. Go from being an artist to try to be a businessman. I got no business plan. I just learned Instagram last week.
We just talked about all the things you need to do.
I know. So I'm learning that. It's slow, but I'm working at it. And I'm trying to be like I did in Instagram today. I'm learning that Instagram's good to do it on Wednesdays and Thursdays because more people look at them then. Okay, give that a try, and I'll
let me run your Instagram.
You go right ahead. I just got to get more pictures.
I'll get you on Venmo at some point. I mean,
Yeah.
you're on Venmo, but it's just not working. So
It was 19 cents and 24 cents.
you found it?
I did.
Oh my gosh. All right. So before we go, Joseph. Joey was what he was called in his years at Trinity-Pawling, and now his professional name is Joseph. So my son is Joseph as well. But do you have anything before we close for the night?
Well, your Instagram is what, Ned? For the audience, your Instagram is?
I don't know. Is it Live for Art?
I don't know.
I don't know. I guess
You
it's,
set it up.
I think it's Live, L-I-V-E, for, the letter 4, Art Gallery.
.ie, right? That's right. It would be .ie, right, Trevor?
Yeah. So I just looked it up. Live
I don't
for
know.
Art Gallery. That works.
Okay.
Okay. So there's my plug for Ned. That's how.
There we go.
Thanks.
Live for Art. That's awesome. Live for Art Gallery, excuse me. Trevor Cole, in your 18 years of experience, your
19.
19,
Oh,
Sweet.
man.
your 4 years, your experience at Trinity-Pawling, what might, because there are some, newly enrolling students here, current students, what's a message that you might have as they think about maybe the next 1, 2, 3 years at Trinity-Pawling?
Yeah, I think anytime that I was given the opportunity to speak in front of people, I would say this, but to just take advantage of every single opportunity that TP gives you. And like, I tried to do that, and it felt like it paid off. But then again, I like look back and I'm like, oh, I should have done that. I should have done that. So there's always things that you can do, but you want to try to have as little regret as you can going through, a place like that can foster some passions and whatnot. And also Mr. and Mrs. Reade are, two of the best people that I know. And I'm very, very glad that I was able to catch Mr. Reade before he.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Well, the beauty of is that he's not going anywhere. They are not going anywhere. The village of Pawling will still have the Reades here. And, I would just say that I was told I burnt the candle at both ends my junior year at Trinity-Pawling. And I think that's because I got too involved. I tried to do too many things. And it's easy to do at a place like this because you can play sports, you can sing, you can act, you can draw all at the same time. But
And take 3 APs.
Yeah.
right.
I was running on 4 hours of sleep at one point. It was not good, but I mean, I still wish I did more. So
Exactly. And I think that's just because of the relationships that we have, the opportunities that we're given. And so I think for those of you who on this call who can't have that opportunity because I've already graduated or you got the opportunity, I think the message tonight is still do it, is be creative. As Mrs. Reade always used to say, just dig in. And who knew that when she used to say that she'd literally be digging in 15, 20 years later. And the fingernails are dirty. That's amazing. I just thought of that. You said, just get your fingernails dirty and everything else will fall into place. So, well, it is almost 8 o'clock. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Mr. Reade, Joey, Trevor, Boots, I'm so glad you showed up.
Thank you.
And for those watching, thank you. As I said, this will be on our YouTube channel probably by Monday. And we wish you an incredible summer, a creative summer, a safe and healthy summer. And when we all come back in September, it'll be a new era at Trinity-Pawling, and we hope to see you all there. And be healthy, be safe, and have a great summer. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.